Alrighty, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Buck the System. I'm your host, David West, and today I'm coming at you guys with a very important and developing story from right here in Southern Oregon. So on March 3rd, KTVL News 10, our local CBS affiliate, ran a news story about a transphobic teacher at Talent Elementary School, a special education teaching assistant, I believe is her official title. In it, you have a parent calling in and saying that she can't believe that someone would say this and that it's terrible and how bad it is. And, of course, the school is now looking into it. My sources close to the story from within the school are telling me that the school has placed Cassie Dutra, the teacher at the center of this controversy, has removed her from her teaching jobs and placed her on office duty for the time being while there is a pending investigation into what she said. We don't know yet if she is going to lose her job, but it is certainly a possibility. And what she said was very benign. We will go all over it in a minute here. But the reason that I'm making this video is because I think that KTVL should be ashamed for running this story. Because the people behind this story, in particular, Brad Smith, a local journalist, are bullies. They are just radical left-wing activists who are hell-bent on bullying people, and in the case of Brad Smith, I think rather clearly for their own gain and their own fame. So I am going to make a video breaking all of this down and showing what happened and showing who's involved and showing why I think that it is just a bunch of radical left-wing activists who hate anybody who does not agree with their views, and they're being rallied by a well-known bully within the community who treats people horribly and says awful things and is not somebody that anybody should be listening to. And there's a lot of very interesting people connected to this group. For example, the mayor of Talent, Darby Ayers-Flood, seems to be one of the people who's enabled him to be as big of a bully as he has been. So, without any further ado, let's get into this video and I will explain to you exactly what is going on here. On February 26th at 11:02 a.m., Cassie Dutra posted the following comment on a KOBI article about the Equality Act. "This is such stupidity. Okay, so I identify as a cat. Give me my special rights that I deserve because I've been discriminated against by all the dogs in my community. Cat emoji." Less than 10 minutes later, at 11:10 a.m., Brad Smith swooped in to try to make a name for himself. Bigotry duly noted. "Cassie Dutra, I'm a reporter with the Rogue Free Press. I just got off the phone with Talent Elementary. Did you share your views with others at the school?" After proudly declaring breaking news all over his social media presence, by about noon that day, Brad Smith put out a fairly lengthy article about Cassie Dutra on his Rogue Free Press blog, where he decried her as transphobic. From the very start of all this, it was obvious what Brad Smith's ultimate goal here was. He wanted to get Cassie Dutra fired. So as soon as I saw Brad's article, I hopped onto my Facebook page and I shared it and I wrote this. "This isn't some wannabe Babylon Bee article. This is a proud and completely sincere attempt by inept and deranged local journalist Brad Smith to bully a woman and destroy her job. Brad, decent men don't bully and harass and try to destroy the careers of random women over asinine Facebook disagreements. Why don't you come have a live-streamed two-way conversation about this topic with me sometime, instead of just picking on people who can't talk back? I'll bring you on for a discussion anytime." Brad pretty much ignored me, but he did make a few comments on the post that I made, saying things like, "Damn, you're fine with bigotry and transphobia?" And Miss Dutra posted her transphobic views on social media. Her choice. She made her bigoted, intolerant views known and has to face the consequences. I continued calling Brad out as a bully and challenging him to have an actual discussion with the grown man instead of just going after women who can't defend themselves. And one thing sort of led to another, and eventually people started saying, "Hey, I would donate money to charity if Brad will actually have a discussion with you." So over the next 2 or 3 days, as I was, constantly keeping Brad in the loop about the updates, he was seeing this. He didn't miss all this. We managed to get about a dozen or so people to pledge $1,000 to a to be agreed upon suicide prevention charity if Brad Smith would just come and have an hour-long discussion with me where I can ask him about his tactics and his behavior and why he's bullying people like Cassie Dutra. And when Brad wouldn't respond to that, we even reached out to local left-wing radio host Jason Hook and asked him if he'd be interested in sort of reaching out to Brad and moderating something on KSKQ, the local public radio station. And he did that. And Brad, again, turned it down. He did not want to come have a conversation with somebody who would actually be talking back to him. Now, at this point, when it became clear that there was nothing that was going to make Brad agree to come have a two-way discussion with someone that he can't just push around and bully, I had already resolved to make a video exposing the bullying behavior of Brad Smith. Because at this point, I had people kind of coming out of the woodwork to tell me about how he'd harassed them, he'd done this to their friend. I even ended up getting added to a secret Facebook group of dozens of people who have been harassed by Brad Smith around Southern Oregon and the Rogue Valley. And I had people who weren't even within that group who were also reaching out to me. So this isn't just like some little cabal of people who are against Brad Smith. This is systemic behavior on his part. But as I was preparing to make a video where I probably would have focused mostly on Brad, and I would have avoided mentioning Cassie Dutra by name because I didn't want to signal boost Brad's bullying, KTVL ran their story about Cassie Dutra.
A parent of a special needs student upset after a teaching assistant at Talent Elementary made a transphobic comment on public Facebook post. Newson's Kevin McNamara spoke to the parent and the school district today.
Commenting on a post about the LGBTQ community on a local TV station's website, Talent Elementary special education teaching assistant Cassie Dutra said, quote, "This is such stupidity. Okay, so I identify as a cat. Give me my special rights that I deserve because I've been discriminated against by all the dogs in my community."
It could be potentially lethal to young queer youth reading opinions from educators, making fun of their identities.
Galen Thoreau is the parent of a potential incoming special needs student at Talent Elementary, but now she says she won't be sending her son there as long as Dutra remains.
A person who is unable to respect the basic identities of people should not be working with our precious youth, especially our wonderful, gifted children that enter that program.
Thoreau, who declined to be interviewed on camera for fear of harassment, says it's not about having a different opinion, it's about the added care needed from an educator.
If this person were operating in a position where they are in their own private home with their own, rules, they can do whatever they want. But when you become, either a public service agent or take on the role of being an educator, you have professional and ethical obligation.
The Phoenix Talent School District said they could not comment on internal personnel matters, but put out a statement which read, quote, "We will continue to work with our employees, our associations, and the community in providing a safe, inclusive, and supportive environment for all students, staff, and families." In Jackson County, Kevin McNamara, News 10.
Once that story ran on KTVL, I realized that the cat was out of the bag. There was no point in censoring Cassie Dutra's name and appearance from this video, and I decided to really go to war hard against the bullies that were going after her. So now that you kind of have an idea of what's going on here and what the story up to this point is, let's take a closer look at Brad Smith, because I want to show you just what an awful, reprehensible human being this guy really is. According to Brad Smith's bio on Facebook, he is a writer, journalist, paranormal investigator, ambivert, autodidactic polymath in training. He's a local left-wing reporter and activist who runs a blog called The Rogue Free Press. He uses a handful of different Facebook accounts. He has all sorts of sock puppets for when his accounts do get deactivated for bullying. I believe he has 4 or 5 of them at least. Something which, it should be noted, is very much against Facebook's policy. And just to give you an idea of the kind of attention-seeking left-wing activist that Brad Smith is, less than 3 weeks before this all started, I think it was something like February 9th, he went after a woman who, on her private Facebook page, shared a post that showed a very muscular, like obviously male bodybuilder in a sports bra, and a caption that said, "Hi, my name is Megan. I'm here for the girls' track meet." And once again, it's very obvious what Brad was trying to do. He was trying to destroy somebody's business, because he immediately went and found out from her Facebook profile that this woman owned a bakery, cake shop kind of a place. And he had people posting nasty stuff on her Facebook page for a group. He had people, there was like a spotlight that ran about her. It might have even been what precipitated this. I haven't gone back and looked at all the dates of when the spotlight ran, but one of the local news stations did a little story about her bakery. And so, of course, there's people, "Are you sure you want to support someone like this? She's a transphobe." It's his modus operandi. He just wants to generate controversy, but that one didn't really go anywhere. So now let's take a look at some of the just absolutely horrifically awful things that Brad has done and said to people. Right off the bat, here's a particularly nasty instance of Brad Smith bullying and being cruel to a woman who is a recovering drug addict who is about 10 years sober now. She had messaged Brad asking him, "Why do you act like such an asshole?" And to which Brad responded, "So you gave a restaurant a bad review just because you didn't get free chips and salsa? That's being a sad, pathetic, entitled wretch." To which she responded, "LOL, you crack me up." And then Brad Smith said, "Speaking of crack, miss it?" Judging by what this woman said about this story in the group where people are sharing their experiences about how nasty Brad Smith is, this is something he's been doing to her for a while. I have no idea what run-in they had, but Brad, that's a low blow. You shouldn't make fun of somebody who's in recovery for drug addiction, especially seeing as how you are someone who claims to care so much about people's well-being and about not bullying people and, suicide prevention and stuff. How can you do that while saying such cruel things to someone who struggled with something like that? Speaking of suicide, how about the time that Brad Smith liked a post encouraging Cassie Dutra to kill herself because she dared question the trans agenda? Pretty weird behavior for someone who says that they're not a bully, they're just a concerned citizen who doesn't want anyone to commit suicide. And of course, that was far from the only time that Brad Smith has liked a comment encouraging harm against people who he disagrees with. See, Brad Smith runs a private group on Facebook for his journalistic efforts, which is called the Rogue Free Press, and it has about 480 members. Unfortunately for Brad, it is not as private as he thinks it is, and I have sources within it that have provided me with a lot of screen grabs of what goes on in there. To protect the anonymity of my sources, I am simply going to refer to my sources as Huel from here on out. So here are some particularly damning screen grabs that Huel sent me from within this group. Here's one where Brad Smith posted a rant about my wife and I, along with a picture of us, to which someone named James LaFlame said, "Man, he looks seriously punchable," a comment which Brad Smith liked. And Brad Smith did not stop at merely liking this comment. He also responded to it, saying, "If you're going to do it right." And he included a GIF of supernatural character Dean Winchester punching the screen. Another person within the group of people who is sharing their stories about being harassed by Brad had this to say: "I didn't really want to put this out there, but just so you can see the level of low Brad will go, this is what he did with a picture of my wife." And as you can see, it is a picture of a woman, not the same woman that I talked about earlier who he'd made fun of, but another woman who he wrote the words "crack whore" on her face. That is, I have no idea if this woman has struggled with substance abuse in the past or not, but at any rate, this is a very nasty thing to say, especially he's sending this to someone's husband. Did he have a disagreement with the husband? Did he have a disagreement with the wife? Who knows? It's a nasty, despicable, and unprofessional thing, and frankly, a very misogynistic thing to do for someone who claims to be some big tolerant lefty who, just loves everybody and is only looking out for people. That's why we have to take these bigots' job away, because we're looking out for the poor, oppressed trans people. It's really hard to take all that posturing seriously, Brad, when you're doing stuff like this to defenseless women. Another member of the group reported that Brad actually made an entire fake Facebook profile of him, which is definitely against Facebook's policy and is very creepy and stalkerish. Here's what he had to say. Please report this profile as pretending to be someone. Brad built a fake profile with my birth name. I changed my name in my early 20s to honor my grandfather, who was my mentor. Brad ran a background check on me and found that I have a name change on file in Oregon since 1993 to honor my dead grandfather. This guy's now literally using that as if it's some kind of big secret. All of my high school friends know I changed my name, and many of them live here. And then, as you can see in the screen grab, in this fake profile that Brad Smith made of one of his enemies, he described his enemy as a red pill patriot and gravy seal, womp womp. Brad, calling anyone a gravy seal and trying to make fun of their weight is really rich coming from you. Yet another man, this one not a part of the group where people share their experiences with Brad Smith, reached out to me and told me of some of his negative experiences with Brad. I'll read a few of those here. Miserable excuse for a journalist. 10 or so years ago, when Cliff Tracy was kind of the local bad boy of mining and headed into federal court, I get this call from Brad Smith, and he asks if I'll talk local mining issues over coffee for Rogue River Press. I'd never heard of him, and Rogue River Press was a local paper, so I said, okay, let's do that. He was disarmingly nice over coffee and put forward the very admirable charade of a, quote, balanced journalist. I mean, by the time we finish coffee, I'm actually looking forward to see what he writes. So I get a copy of the paper, and in addition to literally making up his quotes, he's got me talking like a Texan. What's more, he keeps referring to Cliff Tracy as my, quote, good friend, when he knew damn well my personal exposure to Cliff was actually limited to meeting him during a court recess. I mean, I met my good friend Cliff once, and it was strictly as an interested observer in his court case. Boy, from that interaction, you can see that not only is Brad Smith a dishonest jerk, he's actually a pretty terrible journalist. There are tons more instances of Brad being a bully that I've had people tell me about. I just thought that those were the most well documented, and so that is why I shared those ones in particular. But before I move on to the next section of this video, let's take a look at some more screenshots from the intrepid Huel that show just how angry and nasty Brad Smith was being to my wife and I. James LaFlame, the bitch boy is whining about your remark, I guess. He's referring to the remark where James LaFlame wanted to punch me or said I had a punchable face, because I got the screen grab and shared that and called him out for saying that. And his wife is a hag, evil and ugly down to the bone. Anyone who attacks transgender kids is vile. Wow, calling my wife a ugly hag, that's legitimately very sexist. We didn't attack transgender kids, Brad. We said that it is abusive to transition children to another gender. James LaFlame, he's pals with Jake Eakin. I'm not really pals with Jake Eakin. Jake Eakin is he was involved in a murder. He took part in a murder when he was like 11. He got convicted. He did like 14 years in prison for it. He became a Christian while he was in prison, and he's now a pro-life activist. I enjoy his activism. I follow him on Facebook, and I interviewed him for about 45 minutes or so on my YouTube show. But of course, to Brad, we're like best pals. This fuck is a major creep. Now, this is the kicker. This is the part that really made me angry, because he's flat out threatening my family here. It's really bad that he drags his kids to crowded restaurants during the pandemic. He and his hag of a wife need a visit from Child Protective Services. Brad, you claim to be some Black Lives Matter type activist who doesn't want there to be police brutality and injustice, and here you are admitting that you are just a filthy rat who wants to call the authorities on people that you disagree with. Here's another screen grab from Huel showing Brad Smith saying nasty things about my wife. James LaFlame, that wife of his, she's like Kellyanne Conway hideous. I mean, look at this. if you saw something like this at night, I mean, you'd better have some holy water with you. Go Van Helsing on its arse. Ew, ew, ew. That's literally just a screen grab of my wife from a video where she was doing like kind of comic exaggerated acting. Really weird that you are so hard on like women's looks, Brad. I mean, for one thing, look at you. And for another thing, it's pretty misogynistic. Aren't you supposed to be the tolerant leftist? And just one final comment to highlight the utter hypocrisy and cowardice of Brad Smith. Here's an email that he sent to somebody last summer. It's sad and pathetic that you play tough guy, but you block people who challenge you. But hey, you are a petty bully and cowardly thug. Well, Brad, I think that you are a petty bully and a cowardly thug. And while you may not have blocked me, I challenged you. And not only did I challenge you, I said that it would be a completely civil debate. I offered to have a moderator, and we were going to donate $1,000 to a suicide prevention charity. And you still wouldn't take the offer. So I don't want to hear you try to say this kind of stuff. You are an abject coward, and given your behavior, you are definitely a petty bully. One claim that I saw repeated several times in the Citizens Harassed by Brad Smith group that I took with a pretty big grain of salt was essentially the claim that Brad Smith sort of bullies people on behalf of Darby Ayers-Flood, the mayor of Talent. A private message that I received had this to say about Brad and Darby Ayers-Flood. Brad, the mayor, and city council are now all part of Rogue Action Center, an activist group far left. Darby has always called in a couple of the current council members that were not council members before the last election to fight her battles if she didn't like the public discussion or where it was headed. Since the election, anytime someone questions Darby or mentions something she doesn't like publicly, now the two new council members cannot comment based on council rules, so they use Brad. I did have somebody tell me that he rents from her, but I could not verify it. Another post from this same individual in the Citizens Harassed by Brad Smith Facebook group reads, Exhibit 1D. This is where he found an old photo of me thanking people that helped with a public event to keep the monument land from being expanded so that we can't use it. Then proof that he is part of the Mayor of Talent Squad and Rogue Action Center. And just to be clear, the person that said these last two things is the same person who Brad Smith made a fake profile of that I talked about earlier. Now, to be perfectly clear, I don't really know at all whether or not Brad Smith is bullying people on behalf of Mayor Ayers-Flood, but despite initially blowing this off almost entirely as, too unfounded to even bring up, I have since discovered that Brad and Darby Ayers-Flood are actually very, very well connected to each other. See, in addition to nobly acquiring screen grabs of the nasty things that Brad Smith and his cronies say in the private Rogue Free Press group, my intrepid source Huel also acquired me the entire member list of the group. There are 480 people in this group, and 286 of them were added by somebody. That the little quote that says who they were added by is also included in this list that Huel acquired for me. And of the 286 people who were added by somebody, fully 150 of them were added by Darby Ayers-Flood, who is herself, of course, also a part of the group. As you can see here, this is the group. I've done a Control F search for added by Ayers-Darby Flood, and as you can see, there are 148 of them here. Now, I know I said 150 a second ago. That's because there are two more people that say they were invited by Darby Ayers-Flood. I don't know if that means they haven't accepted the invite yet, or if they had higher, privacy settings on their Facebook to where they have to accept it. I don't know exactly what that means, but I'm counting those in there as 150 people she's added to the group. So that means that, when you include her, we're talking about 151 of the people in this group have been added by Darby. That's in a group of 480 people. She's added basically a third of the people that are in here, enabling Brad Smith. That's really significant. This isn't like, oh, she liked some local reporter and invited a couple people. She's actively helping him. This Rogue Free Press group was started on July 21st, 2020, and Darby Ayers-Flood, mayor of Talent, was one of the first people added to it, one of the first handful added to it by Brad Smith himself. And subsequently, Darby Ayers-Flood invited a whole bunch of people to join the group. Between August 2nd and September 13th, Darby Ayers-Flood added 142 people to the group. This isn't even just something that, she did once when she first joined it. She spammed a bunch of people. She has continued to add people to the group and has added people to the group very, very recently, even since this whole controversy started on February 26th. Since February 26th, when this controversy started, Darby has added 6 more people and invited 2. She's invited or added 8 people to the group in basically the last week since this controversy started. And if you look at the Facebook analytics, you will find that there have only been about 8 people that joined the group. So not only is Darby responsible for giving Brad one of his first big boosts, for getting him his first big chunk of people joining his group, which is how he, is able to spread his just nasty news content. She's the only thing that's even made it grow in the last week or so. So I think it's pretty safe to say that Darby Ayers-Flood and Brad Smith know each other quite well. Now, let's go back and take another look at that KTVL 10 news story, specifically the part where a concerned parent calls in and talks to KTVL about how they don't want to send their special needs student to Talent Elementary until Cassie Dutra is gone.
A person who is unable to respect the basic identities of people should not be working with our precious youth, especially our wonderful, gifted children that enter that program.
After seeing this news story, I decided to track down Galen Thoreau to see if I could reach out to her for a comment. I found her phone number. It wasn't particularly difficult to do, and I gave her a call.
You've reached Galen Thoreau, 503. Please leave me a message and I will get.
Since she didn't answer, I shot her a quick text message. I said, "Hi Galen, I'm sorry to call you so late." It was about 8:51 at this point. "My name is David West. I'm an independent filmmaker and journalist. I heard you speak on KTVL tonight about the transphobic teacher at Talent Elementary. Would you be available for me to ask you some questions?" Galen did not respond until the following morning at 5:36 a.m. when she said, "Hello, David. I decline your offer. I've seen your hostile engagements and bigoted attacks online. Please do not contact me again." Now, I thought that was a pretty interesting response. I suppose she could have looked me up with my phone number. It's not particularly hard to do now that she had it. And it's possible she could have just looked me up even by my name and found me on Facebook and said, "No, I don't want to interview this guy." But given the way that she worded things and when she responded, it really sounded like she had heard of me even before I had reached out to her. Now, again, I suppose she could have heard of me in the past, but I'm not exactly famous. And I kind of doubt you would remember like a random comment I made on a news article that you disagreed with or something. So my immediate thought was, oh, she must be connected to all these rogue free press leftist activist circles. And, that's why she'd seen it and kind of heard of it. She probably knows Brad Smith and all these people. And then Brad Smith put out a post that Huel screen grabbed and sent to me that pretty much confirmed exactly that. David Kirk West is at it again. Yesterday, KTVL did a story on Cassie Dutra and spoke with a concerned parent. As it way, the parent was already concerned about negative interactions with unhinged extremists. Sure enough, West attempted to contact them. Long story short, they shut down West and moved on. I feel bad that they had to deal with that scumbag, and hopefully he'll leave them alone. Bigots and bullies like West and his wife, John and Cassie Mae Peterman, they're unfortunate elements in our society. They think they're funny, sly, and oh so right when they attack people. In reality, their despicable actions only lead to others taking a stand against them. More than ever, that's what we have to do. Boy, that last part is real funny coming from you, Brad, because you sure seem to think you're funny and sly and oh so right to attack people, and your despicable actions are leading to us taking a stand against you. So obviously this pretty much confirms here that Brad and Galen Thoreau are connected in some way. Maybe not necessarily directly. I don't know if Galen had heard directly from Brad or reached out to him or anything like that, but they're definitely running in very, very close activist circles if he's hearing that I had contacted her. And one of his commenters goes on to say, just how self-important and self-righteous do you have to be to go out of your way to try and contact/harass someone you do not know for no other reason than you're a transphobe? Guys, by your logic, if the way that I reached out to Galen is harassment, the way that you are reaching out to Cassie Dutra and people like that is definitely harassment. I tried to call her and then I sent one text. Big whoop. As you can see, I did not harass her at all. Honestly, her and you guys all gave me exactly what I needed, which was just to find out if you were all connected. So now that I knew that these people were all connected in some way, I did some more digging into Galen Thoreau. I found that she has 2 Facebook profiles, one where she goes by Galen at the Clubhouse, looks to be some kind of possibly defunct business profile that she used, and another one where she goes by Galen Laurel, which is her middle name. Her Galen at the Clubhouse page has a visible friends list you can see. She has 108 friends on there, and cross-referencing her friends list with the list that Huel provided me of the members of the Rogue Free Press Facebook group, I was able to find one person who's on her friends list who is part of that group. Doesn't particularly mean a whole lot. But as I went to Galen Laurel's main profile and I found that, she is not in Brad's group herself, I did find that she has a lot of common friends. Now, her friends list is not public, so I just looked through some of her recent pictures. I looked at her most recent photo with a number of likes on it. I think it had like 35 likes or something. And looking at this photo alone, I found that 3 people who had liked it are also a part of Brad's Rogue Free Press group. Unsurprisingly, given what she said when she called into KTVL, Galen is an LGBT and trans rights activist. She has photos of her son at a pride parade. In the some of the comments on some of those pictures, she tagged Heather Ayers-Flood. Heather Ayers-Flood is the wife of Darby Ayers-Flood, the aforementioned mayor of Talent, who I've brought up many times now in this video. She has photos of herself at a pre-Pride party that featured a Glitter Girls drag show at Vice Brewing Company in Grants Pass. And she's also a lesbian herself. It's very obvious that she has an agenda that she's pushing, and that's fine. I'm obviously pushing an agenda. I think that anyone who's honest will say that they are pushing an agenda. The issue here is that the supposedly anti-bullying agenda, it was precipitated by a obvious bully. I think I've proved that pretty clearly at this point. Both Galen and her girlfriend have private friends lists that can't be viewed, so I wasn't able to thoroughly cross-reference it with my list of Rogue Free Press people. Neither of them was on the list of Rogue Free Press people, but just looking at like 2 or 3 different photos on their pages and going through the likes on it, I was able to find at least 6 people who had liked their recent photos who are a member of the Rogue Free Press group. And that's without even counting Heather Ayers-Flood, the wife of Darby Ayers-Flood, who is not herself a part of the group, but obviously establishes a pretty clear connection between these people and Darby Ayers-Flood. And, they're friends with Darby Ayers-Flood themselves, who is clearly a close associate of Brad Smith. It's a very incestuous relationship going on here. We're looking at a bunch of left-wing activists in the Talent and Ashland area who are all working in concert to promote transgender rights. And they are doing it at the expense of a woman who is guilty only of expressing an opinion that they didn't agree with. Cassie Dutra did not bully anybody. She didn't say anything mean to a trans person. She didn't do anything but express concerns with the Equality Act. Valid concerns, frankly. There's a ton of issues with the Equality Act. There are all sorts of people on all different, corners of the political spectrum who have problems with the Equality Act. This is hardly evidence of a right-wing extremist. It's not just conservative Christians like myself who think that it is wrong what the Equality Act would do to freedom of association in America and to religious liberty in America. All sorts of people have problems with it. And now, just to be clear, Galen Thoreau does not have a child in Talent Elementary, nor did she claim to. Her child turned 5 this last September, and having a 8-year-old daughter who was born in September myself and is a student in Oregon, I know that the cutoff for starting kindergarten in Oregon is like the very beginning of September. So given when her child's birthday is, it's very safe to assume that he is not currently in school and won't be attending school until this fall. He does appear to be autistic, given some things that she has said on her Facebook page. So I don't think this was like an entirely disingenuous call-in. I don't think this was just, someone who's not even in the area or anything. As far as I can tell, she's very well connected to people in Talent. The addresses I could find of her don't show her being in Talent, but those things can easily be out of date. She more than likely is in the Talent area, and it's very plausible that she would be sending her kid to Talent in the future. But it's worth pointing out that this is the best they could come up with. This was the most tangentially connected person to the school. Oh, I kind of have a kid who might go there in the future. I guess I can say something about it. I mean, KTVL, why don't you go and ask for a comment from, maybe they can't at this point, but why don't you go talk to some of the other teachers and see if the other special education teachers and teaching assistants think that it is a problem that Cassie Dutra be there? Or see if they say, no, she's a great asset to our team. She does a good job. Why don't you go see if the kids whose last year of school has just been an absolute mess due to the coronavirus nonsense that's going on out there, you're taking some stability away from those kids. Like right now, I guess they have someone else filling in for her, all so that these activists can, feel important and feel like they're doing something in the world. You really want to throw off the education of special needs kids so that you can go after someone for something like that? All that is to say, I think it's pretty obvious that what we are talking about here is a small cabal of left-wing activists and agitators who are working together in at least a semi-coordinated way to impose their will on other people. And of course, they're going to go out there and they're going to say, well, you can't say that kind of thing when you work for the government. Cassie Dutra didn't even say this at school. She said this outside of school. Where does this end? Are you going to now fire every teacher who is a conservative Christian because you just see where they go to church and you say, well, I know what they believe because I can look up the statement of faith for this church. I can look up the denomination. I can look up the church's website, whatever, and find out what they believe. And then you're going to, just be the inquisitors trying to take them out because they're heretics to your secular ideology. This idea that secularism is somehow objective and non-biased and it should be the standard that we all live by is ridiculous. It's nonsense. Obviously, the government should not enforce a religion on people or enforce beliefs on people. But that doesn't mean that people can't hold religious beliefs and work for a public school or for the government in any capacity. In fact, by firing somebody for holding a belief like this, you're basically saying that the government can violate the First Amendment. It can force beliefs on people. Remember, this isn't an instance of this woman being out bullying some random trans person on the street. Look, I would not be stepping in and getting involved. I would think it was horrible myself if she had just gone up to some trans identifying person on the road and started, screaming obscenities at them. That's uncalled for. You don't do that to random people. That would be, belligerent behavior. All that this woman did was express an opinion. Are you saying that we can't hold these opinions at all and work in the public sphere? Or are you just saying that we can't voice them? Because if you're saying the latter, eventually you're going to start saying the former. And now I'm sure someone is going to come out and say, how hypocritical of you to point out that these people are all activists trying to make change when you yourself are an activist who tries to make change. But let me point out two problems with that. One, I am an activist who tries to make change that will encourage freedom for all. I don't care what you believe. You can believe whatever you want. I'm not going to stop you. I might tell you you're wrong in a conversation. I might tell other people that you're wrong. I might try to get people to believe me instead of you, but I'm not going to try to get you fired. And secondly, my activism doesn't involve bullying people. Now, to be clear, a lot of the people here, I don't necessarily know that I'd say they're bullying people. I think it's wrong of them to be, trying to get someone fired, but they're not necessarily bullying people. But this entire movement was started by a bully. This entire push was started by Brad Smith, who was a serial bullier who should not be taken seriously. KTVL, you should be ashamed of yourself for running this story. Don Watson, Rick Nagel, Sarah Crawford, Michael Campbell, Nancy McInnes, those of you who are on the Phoenix Talent School Board, you need to do the right thing here. Do not let a movement started by Brad Smith get a woman fired. He is a vindictive, nasty man. KTVL reporter Kevin McNamara, you're the one that put together the story. You're the one that went out there and did this reporting. You're the one that signal boosted Brad Smith. I think you should be ashamed of that, personally. I don't think you did a very good job of looking into the story, but you can still redeem yourself. Why don't you look into this more? Why don't you look into the people behind it? Why don't you run a story about what a bully Brad Smith is? So just to wrap things up here, remember earlier when I said that a bunch of us had pledged $1,000 total to donate to charity if Brad Smith would just come and debate me? Well, of course, he had all sorts of nasty things to say about that, about how, if they really wanted to donate money to charity, if it was really coming from the bottom of their hearts, they would just do it anyway. They wouldn't need me to come talk about it. And here's the thing, Brad. We did go ahead and make a donation anyway. Now, it wasn't $1,000 because not everybody who had initially pledged to donate wanted to carry on with the new plan. And some of the people who had pledged, if you would come, just did smaller amounts. But we still made a $500 donation to the Detransition Advocacy Network. The Detransitioners Advocacy Network is a charitable nonprofit global effort to improve the well-being of detransitioned people everywhere. Launched in November 2019, TDAN works with local chapters through its core leadership to support those who desist from gender transition and to lobby institutions for the destigmatization of detransition and expansion of detransitioners' healthcare and legal options. So basically, this is a charity that helps people who realized that the gender that they were born with is their gender and not the one they were trying to transition to. And we thought that was a good cause to donate to. So we gave them $500 in your honor, Brad. All right, so that pretty much wraps it up for today. I hope that you guys enjoyed this. Please go out and share it if you think that Brad Smith's behavior is despicable, and if you think that it is wrong to let people go around bullying others, in particular to let people go around and bully women who are just minding their own business in the name of trans rights. I'm sure I will be back with more on this story very soon. Maybe at some point I'll do a live stream where I can talk to people and kind of go more in depth into some stuff that I sort of skimmed over here. But I think I gave you guys a pretty good overview of the situation. I think I made a pretty decent case that Brad Smith is a bully and that this is just this is not a real situation of outrage. This is just a bunch of activists who are hell-bent on reshaping the country to conform to their ideas, and they don't care who they hurt in the process. Because trust me, if Cassie Dutra loses her job, you will have hurt her.